Okay, take three. Gonna do a bit of a draft breakdown. Um, Now that the season's over, I have some more time to make some more content, and just wanted to break down the way I look at and think about draft, and then hopefully find it helpful for other people, as well as a secondary reason I have for making this video is that I think that a lot of people do it wrong. I think a lot of people don't, especially I for a bit of context, I play competitive like at the gold plat level. Um, and I think a lot of teams don't really have a clue about how to think about draft and how to create advantages for themselves in draft. And in fact, I think they often like they paint themselves into a corner. So I'm going to use a match we recently played. This is the Metashift Argon playoffs finals. MG Blaze versus the Rising Tide S Eagles, which is my team. Um, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So I've written down these rules. I don't know how to move this from here. I wanted to move it to somewhere else, but it's going to be stuck there. But yeah, let's go ahead and break them down, kind of, and see how they apply to this situation. So the first thing we're going to do is oh, there we go. The first thing we're going to do is decide which champions are strong and weaken the meta outliers, right? This is how I think about it, right? What champions are strong in this patch? And I want to be clear, this is the subjective part, right? This is from just reading the patch notes, seeing the stats, seeing what other people are playing, seeing what you've tested out and felt good and what felt bad. And this is also going to change patch by patch, right? So if you're watching this not on 12.12, you're going to have circled different things here. But the philosophy is the same, right? So on our patch, what was very strong right now is Seraphine, Taric, Volibear. These are like undeniably just very, very like high win rate, high performing champions. They're played in pro as well, and a few others. Most enchanters are very good right now, and competitive especially. I think the Moonstone just offers a lot of value to team comps. And so we're gonna start with the outliers, right? In my level of play, also like champions like Mordekaiser are very strong right now. Whereas if you think about pro play, right, Mordekaiser's not played at all, and for good reason. Teams are good at kiting, teams are good at dodging, and those both make Mordekaiser much less useful. Right? They build QSS at more opportune times. They understand when they do and do not need to, um, and he loses a lot of value. But for gold players, for platinum players, and even low diamond players, really, that's not the case, right? The things Mordekaiser brings, it's still reliable enough, and doesn't get countered by high levels of play. What else is strong right now? I mean, I think Yumi also very strong this patch, being played kind of at all levels. Lilia extremely strong this patch. Heimerdinger strong on this patch. He just got buffs and is just like been really sleeper for a lot of teams. And yeah, let's just go from here. All right, so like you identify these outliers. Maybe you can identify champions that are particularly garbage right now. I don't don't think like at least in the gold pot level like that really applies as much. If somebody's Zillion's very strong right now. I don't think the champions are like exceptionally useless. I mean, there's a couple of patches where Rise was like don't pick Rise ever. But that's usually more of the power picks. Right, but as you start there, everybody knows this. Everybody can identify, and maybe they might have different reads, but everybody can identify power picks. But this is where it gets, I think, more complicated for a lot of people, and they don't think past this first step, right? And that's in step 2. Decide which champions they give value to and which they take away value from, right? So we're gonna look at these picks again, right? Seraphine, right? Makes it is very favorable when partnered with Juggernauts in a team composition, right? She offers them both mobility, CC, and sustain, so that they can carry inside of a team fight. Champions that can fall up for AOE also gain value, right? But a lot of those Juggernauts, a lot of those champions that like really bruise through are champions like Set, Trundle gains value, Mordekaiser gains value, Volibear gains value. A lot of these melees gain a lot of value when partnered with the Seraphine, right? Similarly, champion like Caitlyn whose main strength is, to wave clear, control the range with her, control the lane with her 650 range, loses value, right? You don't want to pick Caitlyn into Seraphine, because you're not going to push her plates. She wave clears just a bit too well. She has a much stronger, like, even though Caitlyn can win the lane, Seraphine's much more impactful in those early dragon fights than Caitlyn, and it really takes away a lot of Caitlyn's win cons early game, right? Um, a champion that gains some value is maybe like Ashe support, right? Just a great lane partner, makes up for a lot of Seraphine's weaknesses, or just picking make it basically a non-marksman, makes up for a lot of his weaknesses. You have an AD right clicker in lane to help trades. She offers incredible synergy with the Seraphine's E, and so on and so forth, right? And when you do this for every champion, right, who are good Yuumi targets, right? Right, Vladimir, up. Set again, up. A champion like maybe some assassins situationally go up in value there, um, and so on and so forth, right? And you reach a point where, like, okay, now let's go to step 3. So we pretend there's a bunch of arrows from every champion here. Has a bunch of up and down arrows. Who gets stronger and weaker in which situations and why? Right? It's maybe like, oh man, maybe I can't really pick Olaf into Lilia top, right? But Olaf's really good in the Mordekaiser, right? So he has an up arrow and a down arrow, and you have to just keep both of those in mind. Those kind of maybe end up being power neutral. Depends if those champions are actually getting picked, right? But this is what you're establishing the ecosystem. That's why there's a little bit of a divider here, and you repeat step 3 several more times, right? But like, look, Set has benefited. For example, this is step 3 now. You look at the secondary champions. Set has benefited a lot because he partners well with Yuumi, partners well with Seraphine, maybe not at the same time, but individually. He also partners really well with Volibear. Like, that's a lot of point click for enemy top lane to deal with. You can set up a lot of ganks. They're powerful top jungle combo, right? Not a lot of top junglers can 2v2 against Set Volibear. And they facilitate dives well, and then one of them's getting buffed by Yuumi or Seraphine later, right? What does that make weak? Who's vulnerable to dives that maybe normally can get through a Set lane, but because Set has received value, maybe that brings down Kaele's value, right? Maybe Kaele can kite out a Set normally, but if there's a Volibear in the jungle and a Yuumi later on, that Kaele's never getting off the ground, right? Maybe that brings down other immobile champions in other roles that can get ran down by Set Yuumi, or they don't have the damage to get through them. Maybe like somebody with like relatively low damage out of mid lane doesn't build the Angies, right? Like Vex, down bad. Like Vex is never getting through that, and she loses value, right? And you do this when you're done doing this. There should be dozens of arrows on every champion, right? Once you do it for the secondary champions like Set, you do it for the tertiary champions. Okay, well, if Vex loses value from that, which Vex already have arrows on her from primary champions, right? But then when you do it again and again and again and again, and what you end up with is this complex ecosystem of what's strong and what's not, as well as what's strong and what's not against each other, and how they play the field, basically. Maybe you don't have to worry about Set's matchup in a Shaco because nobody's picking Shaco, right? Nobody's picking Shaco top. It's not good. Just for example, right? But you end up with this complex ecosystem of up arrows and down arrows. I'm making sure I'm recording because one time I wasn't recording. And you create this meta, right? You create a meta of what's strong, what's not strong, based on starting with the outliers and working your way towards every single League of Legends champion, and then thinking about how each of them interact with each other from there. As well as but you start at the strongest champions and the weakest champions, I guess, because those are most likely picked early on in a draft, right? And then now let's get into the actual draft, right? That's how you create your sense of the meta. That's how you build the draft board. What's strong? What are you looking for to complement those strong pieces with, right? Like, I don't necessarily think Set's an OP champion, but I really like the way he combos with these pieces, right? Same thing with several other picks, right? I don't think like Misfortune's a very strong, like, an OP champion, but she combos really well. She does really well against a lot of these champions, right? And stuff like that. So then we get into the draft, right? B1, right? It's going to be just, the world's your oyster, right? Everything's enabled, except for whatever was banned, right? They banned Lilia, they banned Mordekaiser, and they banned Yuumi, which are decent bans. So we're gonna go for another power pick, right? It's just whatever's available. But so let's look now that we're getting to the real draft, right? Steps 4, 5, and 6. As champions get locked in, reevaluate what has been given value and had value reduced, right? So we talked about it already, and this is on purpose because I obviously I rehearsed this. But we picked Seraphine, and that has reduced value on Caitlyn, right? That has reduced value on Caitlyn on the enemy team, right? So what the enemy team, maybe they have a proficient Caitlyn player, but we've reduced. I mean, it was not a great pick to begin with, and we've reduced that value, right? We've reduced value on Caitlyn, right? We've simultaneously increased value on champions that can deal with Seraphine very well in lane, that aren't reliant on Caitlyn's win cons that Seraphine shuts down, right? You can maybe either combo with like a very aggressive lane that has that builds into shield bow because you sustain through Seraphine's poke, and you offer a lot of all-in pressure against her. That you can actually effectively not really zone Seraphine, but you can set up dives and stuff on her. You can set up ganks. I think Ashe does a phenomenal job setting up ganks on Seraphine. Forcing Seraphine to take cleanse is a huge plus. And Ashe does very well into the champions that Seraphine enables, right? Ashe kites Set. Ashe kites a lot of these other juggernauts as well. Ashe puts Seraphine behind, and as well as accelerates her own jungler and her own mid laner, whoever's coming to help. Right? Maybe if the enemy team was following this rules 4 and 5 here, they would pick a champion that takes away value from Seraphine, like Ashe. But instead, they do the opposite, and they pick they go and pick Caitlyn, Morgana, right? I think Morgana's a bit of a mixed bag. Her black shield's broken very easily. Seraphine plays at a range where she should not really be getting hit by Morg Mines very often. But the black shield is if timed right, if played well, is effective. Is effective for Seraphine's R, and then also because of Seraphine's squishy nature, if you can make the bind land, it's a bit of kind of a skill check type thing. If you can make the bind land, you do have pressure there. And so they pick Caitlyn, right? With a champion that has lost a lot of value, but then they do follow it up with the Morgana, and Morgana and Caitlyn are synergistic, right? It's very clear why, and they give each other value back. But you've already put yourself in a bit of a deficit, right? You have picked a champion that that has lost a lot of value already in Caitlyn, right? And then picks Morgana. Morgana's fine. And then we answer with so now I'm thinking about rules 4 and 5, right? I'm not I'm trying to make the same mistakes. They have picked champion Morgana that is not very effective at peeling back a Caitlyn. And a champion Caitlyn that uses her range in order to avoid getting herself in bad situations. But when somebody's on top of Caitlyn, it's very hard for Caitlyn to get out. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to pick dive, right? I want to pick dive. I want to get on top of Caitlyn. I want to be the type of champion that Morgana struggles to peel off. And so what I look for, right? I end up going for here, let's erase some of these. Clear screen. Let's look at only what's been picked now, right? So I picked Caitlyn, and spoilers, I'm about to pick Senna and Nocturne. And the enemy team has picked, I cleared the text there. Just go back and reread it. I know what it says, so I'll be able to reference it. They've picked Caitlyn and Morgana, right? I picked Nocturne. He's very good at diving Caitlyn. He's very good at avoiding dying to Morgana in the process. Senna as well, is not, you don't think of as dive, but her ulti goes over the top, right? It's something that can be layered on top of other dive to help support the dive from a global distance. It's very nice, as well as Seraphine too, to an extent. Right. So I've taken further value away from the Caitlyn. I've taken value away from the Morgana. Morgana, I have a spell shield, and Morgana's her Q really is the only way to really peel me off. Obviously, I guess the R can, if depending on her max order, the R can survive my fear damage and not go through, but it's situational. And either way, I'm still right clicking the shit out of Caitlyn. And I picked Senna that can assist with that as well as make me tankier. So what does Nocturne do, right? He takes away value from other champions, right? This goes every step of the way. Champions lose value and gain value, right? Nocturne takes away value from any other things that are squishy and require peel, right? They can't peel Nocturne off, right? Maybe it takes away value from something like Akshan. Takes away value from Corki. It's also it takes away value from they've already picked a lot. Most of them takes away from a lot of AD carries that are vulnerable. To be honest, especially when they don't have good peel. It takes away value from a lot of mids that can't deal with him. It also takes away value from stuff like Shen that requires vision. It requires vision to get through. Or champions that just need to be able to see the enemy in order to react properly, which are mostly long range champions, right? Xerath down stonks. Oh, this should be down arrow. And as well as Rule 6, Rule 5 was to dissuade future champions or prevent future champions from getting value, right? They picked a strong bot lane, right? I've said that Caitlyn loses value to Seraphine and stuff, but this is still a lane that can definitely explode in their favor if played very well. And it's definitely like Caitlyn Morgana definitely can still maintain prio over Seraphine and Senna just because they have more fighting power, right? It's not enough, and it's I think this is still favored for Senna and Seraphine, but not necessarily in lane, right? What did you pick Nocturne? Nocturne's one of the best early game duelists in the game, right? He synergizes very well with lethal tempo, and he has a spell shield for whatever ability the enemy's maxing first, and he can just 1v1 most junglers out there in the early levels, between the free stats he gets, the targeted CC, and the spell shield. So I've dissuaded them picking an aggressive jungler to help capitalize on their aggressive. I say aggressive, but it's more like a pokey, but that can capitalize on their lane, right? So I pick an aggressive jungler that takes away value from junglers, maybe like mobile junglers that can get on top of my Seraphine and Senna and kill them, because Seraphine and Senna are vulnerable to ganks. They can be, right? Like Kayn or a Viego or something. They lose value because Nocturne can fight those champions, can bully them in the jungle, and prevent them from coming online. Nocturne 1v1s, I don't know, like Rengar or something. I don't think you'd pick Rengar or something like that in this situation. But he 1v1s a lot of junglers that want to bully Seraphine Senna. And Nocturne duels them. He's a very good duelist. Right? So I've preemptively dissuaded the enemy from picking things like that. Right? So now their response is to pick things that aren't vulnerable to Nocturne and that are good against Senna Seraphine, right? But instead, here's what they pick, right? They pick Corki, and they followed up with Wukong, right? They pick Corki that has just lost value to Nocturne. By the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. Corki also loses value. Corki is objectively a pretty strong champion, but he loses value again to Seraphine, right? Seraphine and Senna both offer sustain to mitigate his poke. He's a poke champion. And on top of that, he'd been vulnerable to Nocturne himself. But they pick a mid jungle combo, like Corki and Wukong aren't super synergistic with each other. Wukong wants a mid laner that can protect him in the first few levels, right? Especially after the nerfs he's received, especially into the matchup that you already see with Nocturne. You have now picked a weak mid-jungle combo. These guys are anti-synergistic, and they're already weak in a Nocturne, right? So they've picked champions that we have taken away value from preemptively, and they've picked them anyway, right? And that's just, I think it's a huge draft blunder that I see teams do all the time in different ways. Just going for picks that maybe Wukong's strong in a vacuum. He's not maybe S tier anymore after the nerfs, but Wukong's strong in a vacuum. Corki's strong in a vacuum, right? But we have picked things that have preemptively lowered their value, and they did not adapt. They did not follow, rules 4 and 5, or 4, 5, and 6 mostly actually. If you go back and look, and what does this open up in our last rotation, right? Champions that you never see, right? Right. Let's be clear. Like, I think Lee Sin. This is gonna be a strange example until you see. Lee Sin is a bad mid laner, right? He's melee with limited wave clear, falls off later, and offers limited utility, right? All he does is early game bully, right? But look what's happened, right? you've given Lee Sin value by picking support that cannot peel him very well, as well as an AD carry with telegraphed. She's quite telegraphed. Like everything she presses stands her still. You know, um, just a vulnerable bot lane, right? You've picked a weak mid laner early, along with a weak mid jungle combo, and on top of that, even picked a jungler that Lee Sin does fantastically into with the True Sight, as well as done that knowing that we have a strong jungle advantage already, right? And suddenly you've given a crap tier mid laner like Lee Sin so much value with the combination of picks that you presented that he becomes a good pick for us, right? And that's exactly what we do. We lock in Lee Sin mid, right? And it's just such it's enough power in the early game that, and then we're able to snowball. We're able to snowball from there and transition that to other lanes, and amass a huge lead, right? We end up actually throwing the lead later. Here's the let's finish draft first, and I'll talk about that after. So we pick in Lee Sin, and then finally with our last pick, right? We have a fantastic dive comp, right? They have 3 squishy champions: Kate, Morg, Corki, and a Wukong who provides decent disruption, but it's not enough, right? He provides 2 small knockups. It provides 2 knockups. Wukong is still a decent pick in a vacuum, but it's just we're expecting, right, Wukong to be behind. He's not going to be super impactful at the point in the game where we're strong and we can close out from there. So what do we need? What's our 5th pick? What do we need? We're blind picking top, right? They've saved top for counter pick. I need to pick something that can I need something that it's a strong laner, because I already have Seraphine Senna that's probably not going to win lane, right? They're going to do fine, and they're going to deny Caitlyn from winning, but they're not going to win themselves either. I need to pick a relatively strong laner, or that at least if it's not a strong laner, has good CC setup. And then also, right, I need to dissuade whatever's going to counter our team comp, right? So I lock in Sion. Oop, I want to go green here. I lock in Sion. Where's Lee Sin? I lock in Sion, and what Sion does is twofold, right? He wins a lot of lanes. Just with the amount of wave clear he has, he wins a lot of lanes. But he dissuades a lot of the picks that we were worried about. I was worried about maybe a Gragas or a Shen. Being champions that can disrupt our dive. And Silent Sand does favorably into both those champions, right? Silent Gragas is kind of a wash, but he brick walls Gragas. They kind of just brick wall each other. But I think Silent benefits more from that. He scales. Yeah, he gets extremely tanky, whereas Gragas does not get nearly as tanky. And also again tank. Caitlyn is not very exceptional against tanks, right? As well as Silent just massively outwave clear Shen. Those picks we were worried about, or I was worried about. And then, right, and then if they try and counterpick him with something lane dominant, Sion is at least bulky enough to and has enough wave clear to survive those. Right, he loses less value to counters because of his wave clear and tankiness, as well as he offers really good gank setup. Right, he has multiple forms of CC they're all pretty reliable. So if I'm winning mid jungle, I can transition that lead to top easily with the gank setup. Right, they end up picking Tahm Kench, which does finally, right, they've picked 4 champions now that increase Nocturne's value, right? They keep increasing Nocturne's value with every pick they do. Even after they see the Nocturne, they still increase my Nocturne's value. But they finally picked Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench definitely reduces Nocturne's value, right? Denies his ability to dive in a lot of cases, and is quite meaty for Senna and Seraphine to try and get through. But the Sion has accomplished his goal, right? Weak wave clear. Good gank setup onto the Tahm Kench, and then also something I forgot to mention earlier is that Sion also, like, into a lot of those champions like Shen or like Gragas, he will build Hullbreaker and have good split push threat even after the nerfs, right? So we had 2 options to Sion. He's either going to be gank setup and a tank, or he's going to be a split push threat if they because he's dissuading those peel back champions. And that's exactly what we did, right? They picked TK. We are anticipating Sion to be more of a split push threat then. He builds into Hullbreaker, and it gives us an avenue to win the game, even after we throw, because we play bad. But I mean, I'm just going to jump ahead to 10 minutes here. And it scores 7-1, right? Um, 7-2. My bot lane's losing, right? They're actually just misplaying, right? My set has died twice. But like, dude, Lee Sin is 6-0, right? And I'm 1-0-3 and we're 0-2 top. Um, like these three, our third, fourth, and fifth picks have all got tremendous value because I'm picking according to what they're giving value to, right? I know Lee Sin is good against at least 80% of their team. We didn't see the Tom Kench. I know Sion's gonna be good against 80% of their team. I didn't see the Tom Kench. And Nocturne is gonna be good at least against 40% of their team, and they gave more value to it. But if they hadn't hamstring themselves into a corner jungle, then I'd be able to shut down this Caitlyn Morgana, right? I wouldn't be so busy just farming Wukong and farming Corki. Um, right? And we're end up in a commanding position here, and we end up throwing a little bit later, right? We definitely just throw. Um, but we have enough of a lead, and we had enough of a viable win con, especially one that scales late like the Sion, that we ended up closing the game out, and that's that. Um, like we were able to create an advantage in draft that despite our play, despite our throwing, and despite like the general sloppiness of our play, I was able to create enough of an advantage in draft that we can win a game where our opponents were playing better, right? The final scoreboard for this was like 26-28, right? And we got Dragon off of a steal. Right? Like we definitely threw our lead here. Like you can already see Lee Sin died once for no reason. We didn't too. Where is it? Yeah, it's literally coming right here, man. Okay, here's my team backing off. Sion 0 mana. We're backing off, and look at Lee Sin. He decides, it's a good 1v4 angle. And gets collapsed on. My team's all backing off. We called to back us out. Dodges right into the Morg Q. And yeah, I mean, he throws away 1,000 gold over. Morgana got it, I guess. But like, it's just this is not where you want to be, and this is not what good teams don't do that, right? They don't throw away 1,000 gold for no reason on their carrying player. But we had given ourselves such an easy time because of draft, right? I've only picked champions that they have increased the value of, and I've picked champions preemptively to decrease the value of the things that are going to hurt us the most, like the Tom Kench. I was thinking more Shen Gragas. Tom Kench was not already on my radar of what he picked, but Sion did the same thing as the reasons. For the same reasons we were cautious against Shen Gragas, TK did the same thing, and Sion was effective into that. Very effective into that. And yeah, I mean, go back and read those rules again, understand what I'm talking about here, and I mean that's just basic draft fundamentals, right? Focus on picking things that your opponent has given strong value to, as well as denying things that currently have high value on the enemy team. And then also avoid things, I assume my final talking point here, is number 6, avoid things that your opponent has taken value away from. At the beginning of this video, I circled Taric, and I circled Volibear for strong picks, right? Caitlyn Morgana both decrease the value of Taric, right? Taric is one of the best supports in the game right now. Volibear is one of the best junglers, right? Caitlyn Morgana significantly decreased the value of Taric and Volibear. So guess what I didn't do? I did not pick those champions, right? It's as simple as that, right? Best support in the game, they've picked something that makes it feel worse. Don't pick it. One of the best junglers in the game, they've picked stuff that makes it feel worse. Don't pick it. And instead pick things that they have not taken away value from, that they have given value to. And then you just come up with a draft. You get a draft intention there, and then you just, as long as you are aware, if you're intentional and aware of what you're doing, that loading screen strategy where everybody's talking about how the draft went, what the win cons are, that conversation should have itself, right? It wasn't hard for us to say, like Lee Sin can do whatever he wants in this early game, and for me to, and from that I'm invading his chickens, I'm invading his red. I am, hovering around mid because, his only lose con is if he dies while going for all in or something, right? I'm hovering around mid. Once they're behind, right, I start ganking top. I would have been ganking bot, my bot was misplaying, and they're dying too much and dying and without even blowing the opposing enemy sums. But we ended up still, that's where gameplay comes in. It's hard to 100% win rate a game in draft, but I think my team, I'm the one who does draft my team, did a very good job setting our team up for success through draft. And I think the opposing team, on the other side, did a very poor job setting their team up for success, and in fact, giving more value to things we'd already picked. Right? They're picking Corki after we picked Nocturne. They're picking Corki after we picked Seraphine. They're picking, Tom Kentro's a decent pick there, but they already lost draft at that point. But I don't know if there's a better pick there that could have stopped San from split pushing. But they're picking Wukong when they've already locked in Corki, right? They've lost value. Their own pick is decreased value of their next pick, right? It's just stuff like that, right? It's stuff you need to be thinking about if you want to get advantages in draft. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote. Thanks for listening.